Have you ever met someone and within about 3 seconds your brain decided exactly who they were? Maybe you thought this person seems really nice, or maybe you thought the opposite. The funny thing is, our brains do this automatically. In psychology, this is called the field of social cognition. Social cognition is the way our brains interpret, remember, and make sense of information about other people. Because we process so much information every day, our brains rely on mental shortcuts to make decisions quickly. So, what is social cognition? Social cognition refers to the mental processes we use to understand the people around us. We constantly observe behavior, interpret what it means, and make judgments about people's personalities or intentions. The problem is there's simply too much social information to carefully analyze all the time. Our brains are constantly trying to be efficient. Instead of slowly evaluating every detail, they often take shortcuts so we can make quick decisions in social situations. If our brain didn't do this, we could probably spend 10 minutes analyzing why someone said hello to us in the hallway. Mental shortcuts are called heuristics. A heuristic is basically a mental rule of thumb that helps us make fast judgments without carefully analyzing everything. Most of the time, heuristics are actually very helpful and allow us to quickly interpret situations and respond appropriately. However, because they rely on quick guesses rather than careful analysis, they can sometimes lead to errors or incorrect assumptions. A real life example from my own life happened when I first met my friend Norma, who seemed very quiet and distant. My brain immediately assumed that she was unfriendly, but later I found out that she was just shy and uncomfortable in new social situations. My first impression of her was completely wrong. In that moment, my brain took one small observation and used it to build an entire conclusion about my friend Norma. Thank God we're still friends 16 years later. My brain basically saw one puzzle piece and decided it had already finished the puzzle. My bad. Since things like this happens, it's called salience. Salience refers to the tendency for our brain to focus on whatever stands out the most in a situation. In my example, Norma was quiet, and that really stood out. It was the most noticeable thing that my brain focused on and ignored all other possible explanations. So instead of thinking maybe she's shy, my brain just jumped straight to, well, she's probably a B word. Turns out my brain had confidence, just not accuracy. Advantages of mental shortcuts, even though they can cause mistakes, they allow us to process information quickly and avoid becoming overwhelmed by the huge amount of information we encounter every day. They help us make fast decisions and respond to situations without needing to carefully analyze every detail. Without it, our brains would basically freeze every time we had to interpret a social situation. Advantages of these mental shortcuts, however, the downside is that they can lead to incorrect assumptions about people or situations. When we rely too heavily on mental shortcuts, we may judge someone unfairly or misunderstand what is really happening. These quick judgments can sometimes reinforce stereotypes or lead to misunderstandings. Strategy for reducing these biased errors is to slow down our thinking and to gather more information before forming a strong conclusion about someone. Simply being aware that our brains use shortcuts can help us question our assumptions and maybe look for additional explanations. Understanding social cognition helps us recognize how thinking works and reminds us to be more thoughtful when interpreting other people's behavior. In conclusion, our brains are great at making quick decisions, but sometimes it helps to pause and make sure that the shortcut actually actually leads us in the right direction. The information is based on the social psychology textbook from the course material.